All right, what's up, CG Cookie? This is Jonathan Lampel, and with the world famous Jonathan Gonzalez.
Hello, everyone.
Today is a super cool live stream for multiple reasons, but one of them is we get to show you a game that we made. So, Jonathan, do you want to tell them about Tank Ball?
Yeah, so Tank Ball was a game that started off as an idea for a game that I wanted to create myself, and then we're coming up with these ideas of creating more game projects. And I thought about, why don't I just create this game? So we want to create some simpler games. Initially, the idea was to create like a 1 hour game. Unfortunately, this is not a 1 hour game, but this game is going to teach you all of the
All
fundamentals
right,
of
what's
creating a
up,
very
CG
simple
Cookie?
game.
This is
And this game
Jonathan
is just
Lampel.
based off a lot of physics. So the premise of the game is that you fight against other tanks. In this case, just one tank, but you got to have multiple tanks. And you fire out a ball, hence tank ball. And this ball can bounce around in the level. And if it hits a tank, it applies damage. Then if you get hit enough times, then you actually explode. But the twist with this is that you can't actually physically move the tank around. You have to actually fire out a ball, which then provides recoil to the tank, which pushes it around. So you slide back in the opposite direction of the direction that you're shooting in. So that's the whole premise of the game, and it is quite fun because it's always different every single time we play. The AI isn't super smart, but it is going to be different every single time because it's going to be random in terms of how it's going to be aiming, and then obviously how you play as well. You have to be very almost tactical in how you move around to avoid being hit by other balls, but also being able to hit the other tank. So that's the premise of Tank Ball.
It's a fun mechanic too. I remember playing like the earlier test versions, and that was pretty fun. And then I've only played the new updated version once, and I got destroyed so fast. It was pretty bad. So hopefully I'll do a little bit better today.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I did publish this on itch.io. I'm trying to have a place for all the games that we create from CG Cookie on one singular site. So itch.io basically fits that bill perfectly. So I did make this game public for you guys to play. It is available for basically all the platforms and also WebGL. So I'm going to be posting a link in the chat so you guys can actually play it yourself.
Yeah, because that'd be sweet if you guys can play along with us
Yeah.
as we go through this. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So the course isn't out yet. It's going to be out next week, but the game is available for you guys to play, so you guys can see what the game is actually about, and whether it's something that you actually want to play yourself. So Lampel and I are basically going to be talking about this game, but also his own course. He created the tanks for this game, which actually look amazing. So that's a big
Thank
draw
you.
to this game was the little tanks.
Yeah, that was fun, and I think that's what's pretty unique about these kind of projects is that like you can learn how to build them in Blender and not just follow along with like exactly what I do. You can make this like a giant tank or like smash like different parts together and make like your own unique monster and then go through the programming part of it. So it's a cool way to like tie everything together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'll be some fun projects. Kent says he's played several games today. Several games of Tank Ball.
Yeah. So this game has been, I guess, in a prototype stage for a while. This is I think the first time I started creating the prototype was in maybe late August or so. We played it some during a retreat and stuff like that. It didn't start off how it looks now. It was very, very simplistic. I found some tanks on Sketchfab and I used those and had some very simplistic models, but I thought this looks a lot better overall. So it's been a process. I'll probably create a article on the process because I still have a lot of the old like promo shots and some of the older projects, so I can use that so you guys can see the process. It doesn't just start off looking great and playing great. It starts off by prototyping and finding out what works best.
Yeah. And another cool thing about this project is that it's pretty fast to make too. Like obviously no game is like fast to make completely. But the whole goal is to make a bunch of smaller projects that kind of get people interested in making games, even if they're not like super technically inclined or if they've never done it before. Is it something that you would recommend for beginners, or should they go through more like introduction stuff first before they jump in?
I mean, I would classify this as a beginner project, but my idea of a beginner is probably different than a lot of other people's. In this course, unlike other courses, like it's kind of similar to what I did within the tower defense course, but I believe in that course I didn't actually go line by line, like writing off the scripts. In this course, I do. That's why it's a 3 hour course because we actually write out each individual script. Um, but some of the script stuff that we go over is, I would say, maybe intermediate, but I do go over it line by line, so it is pretty easy to understand, I would think. So it is a 3 hour course. You can go through it maybe over the weekend and build the game. It is pretty fun. But having some knowledge would probably help. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, good weekend project. Honestly, like I want to do it myself. Like I think that'd be fun because I've obviously done stuff with Unity, but I haven't really dove into the scripting part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And even just like scripting heavy courses seem like a little bit intimidating, even though I know that they're not. I feel like this is a good way to like get myself to actually do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely something I want to try to change in 2019, where it's not so technical heavy, I guess you would say. And Miranda is actually in the chat, so she was the one that actually gave me the idea of maybe focusing more on the game asset side of things, like still have game projects, but provide more of the technical stuff as almost like components that you can just place wherever you want. I could probably go over what those components do, but not go so in depth with the actual scripting, and maybe try to introduce more game development to beginners who are really more focused on the art side of things, but still want to be able to actually create a game.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And even, I mean, that ties in perfectly with Blender and concept art side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think it'd be really fun to have more, like, just fundamentals of game development itself, because that's a whole, I mean, that isn't art. That's a total art that can sometimes be a little bit lost if it's just that technical how-to.
Yeah. There's definitely a whole other side to that. The game art side, level design, even just writing out like stories for the game, how the rules of the game, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, here we probably focus more on the art side of things, but I think we could definitely have a lot more game asset stuff, a lot more artistic stuff. I mean, even with animation, with Wayne and stuff like that, I could definitely see animation being a bigger part of the courses that we offer for games.
Oh, absolutely. And just quick plug while we're at it, Wayne just released 2 tutorials today, one on animating with the grease pencil in 2.8 and one about looping videos with the video sequence editor. So if you're looking for more things by Wayne, that's out today.
Awesome.
Yeah, with that, if you have any questions about the game or about the process of making it, that's basically what we're going to be talking about today, and we're just going to have some fun and play the game, mess around with it. If you have questions, let us know in the chat. The one question that I did get so far is, Ellen said the most important question, have you caught up on Pokemon yet? And the sad answer is no, I haven't. It's just, they're really long games, aren't they? Like,
yeah.
You played through them, Gonzo, right?
I'm not really into Pokemon, I gotta say.
Yeah, see, okay, so I'm not the only one. Okay, I feel a little bit better now.
I like the premise, I just don't know. I don't really get into it.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, should we play some Tank Ball?
Yeah.
I don't know how it goes.
So I'm gonna play this. This should work on Chrome. If you're playing the WebGL version of the game, it should work on Chrome. My Chrome seems to have issues playing it, so I'm gonna play it on Firefox.
Yeah, I tried playing it. Chrome worked fine for me.
Okay.
It did not work in Edge, but I don't know whether I expected it to or not.
Yeah, I don't know. With WebGL, I think some of the browsers are very finicky with it. Chrome used to work flawlessly. Now it doesn't. Now Firefox works perfectly for me.
Interesting.
So I'm just going to play the WebGL version on. I'm not going to expand it or anything like that. Actually, let's go full screen on it because it'll look best. I'm just going to share out my screen.
Miranda says you can finish Pokemon in 1 weekend. I don't know if I believe you. Okay, so you're playing the game on itch.io, which before you had talked to me about it, I actually didn't know what it was. Can you explain a little bit about itch.io? Like, it's just like a game platform, but
Yeah, I think of it as a place to share out games that you create, not just like web games, but also like if you build games. I did include downloadable versions of the games for Windows, Mac, and OS X, but they also have things like game jams. And it's not just for games either. It can be for artists that want to be able to actually share their work online. So I haven't really used it a whole lot. I started not using it more, but becoming more aware of itch.io this year. I saw a lot of people posting up game jams, and they all originated from that site. I was like, whoa, I got to start using this because we want to have our own games on the site, and we've kind of done that when we posted in articles and like embed the game within articles. And I've also tried doing that on Facebook, but it always seems to get kind of lost. So I want a central place to actually play this game.
yeah, and I think that'll be sweet to actually have it out there in the wild, if you will. And I think you were. I don't want to put anything in your mouth, but the tower defense game that we made, is that going up there?
Yeah. So next week, well, I won. So next week we are going, or I'm going to be publishing the game up there as well. I did go through a number of things that I've changed in the game. So I did add a few new things. I did modify the lighting and I also added post processing.
Nice.
So that's going to be accompanied by an article discussing the process of basically rejuvenating old projects. But yeah, that is a game that I definitely want to have up there as well. So hopefully, with both those games up on there, it'll hopefully bring in some good traffic to the site and hopefully get people playing our games and seeing what we're all about.
Yeah, that was a fun project last year, and it's cool that we're doing more. One question that we got from Quite Nameless is, how long did it take to create the game? So you said about 3 hours or so?
Well, that's a bit of a ambiguous question. I would say, I mean, like I mentioned before, the prototyping process started in August. The actual game itself, just putting it all together, could be done probably within a day. But most of that is like you spend 10% building the game, and the other 90% building out all the other features that are going to make it feel much better. So you're polishing the game for that last 90% of it. So this game right here took a month, just constant polishing. And then you have also creating the game assets, like the crates, the tank especially. All that takes time. Adding in the UI, that wasn't included in the first run. Adding in camera shake, slow motion effects, all that kind of stuff. Adding in the different particle effects, all that takes time. And trying to find what works best for this game. So, if you're recreating this game yourself, based off everything that was created, this will take you 3 to 5 hours.
Nice. That's not too bad at all.
Yeah.
And with all that fancy stuff, because there are a lot of effects, and we'll see that as we keep playing. Yeah. But there's plenty of particle effects and cool explosions and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so there's like 3 particle effects right here whenever I fire. So there's one for the turret, there's one for the smoke, there's one for the sparks, and then we'll probably only see it once, but whenever the tank explodes, that's actually about I think it's like 4 or 5 different particle effects playing together, and it also has like a very subtle shockwave effect as well. So you'll see that whenever I shoot a ball and it hits an object, you'll see like a little shockwave. It's like a distortion effect. So yeah, those are all the different effects, and then you also have the trail that's glowing and stuff like that. So there you go. I died.
Boom. Nice. Yeah, I'll play this as well. Let me hold this up. Okay, let's see how this goes. Oh, for some reason, okay, I might need to restart. My mouse movement is way off.
Game over. Get ready. Attack.
Okay, here we go. So how did you decide some of the game mechanics, like how long it takes to reload and how many bounces you get per ball and stuff like that?
For the reload, I think right now for the actual game, it was originally 1 second, but I was finding it was like you're shooting too much, so I bumped it up I think to like 1.5 seconds. I just didn't want people to be able to fire super quick in that regard. For the recoil is also another factor, so how much can be pushed back. I think I lowered it down for this game. It was at at a max value of 1,000, which I forget exactly how the calculation for how much force that applies, but it was at 1,000. I brought it down to 750, just so the tank wouldn't be sliding around super crazy. But that's something you can modify if you go through the course. You can modify it and go as crazy as you want. So you can have, the recoil push the tank halfway across the map. There's that, and there's also some settings for the enemy tank for how fast he can turn his turret around, how fast he can actually start firing at you and stuff like that. Because I want to make it a bit challenging, but not too challenging. Because initially I did have it set up where every single time you get hit, it was 50% damage. So you take 2 hits and you die. And with the enemy character, he can look at you and directly target you, and he's always 100% accurate. So it's very tough to actually try to avoid him, because by the time he's already looking at you, you have to try to avoid him, and sometimes you can't. So, but that's stuff that you just have to play around with and find a good feel for it. I was also planning on potentially having in multiple characters in there, so having a total of 4 tanks, but I thought that was gonna be a little bit too crazy.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is embarrassing. I'm sharing my screen as I play. I've hit myself twice. Like,
yeah, that's the other thing too. Like, it's difficult because they're not. The ball that you shoot out can also hit you as well. So that's something that you have to be careful about. You have to be a bit tactical with it. You can't just shoot directly straight in front of you, because it's gonna bounce back and hit you.
Come on, I got a straight line of sight and nothing. Boom, there we go.
Game over.
Okay, Silent Heart says, every stage is important, but planning and design certainly helps a lot, lol. Yeah, and that's very true.
Get ready. Attack!
Looking through the chat here. Yeah, and as far as the design of the level, that's definitely something you have to take into account as well, because this game is largely based off recoil and things basically ricocheting off objects. So I figured, having these little containers would probably be the best way to do that. Initially, I had it based off these very basic just walls, but I thought this was a kind of nice little touch to have these props in there and stuff like that. I did have an idea for other levels. The good thing about this project is that you can actually build multiple levels just off this simple mechanic. So you could have characters on a floating platform, and you can't fly off the platform or you die, so you have to be a bit more careful about how you actually move around in that level.
Man, this is rough. How if anybody's playing along, I wish there was almost like a high score or something. Because I can't tell how I'm doing objectively, but it's pretty mediocre, I feel like. So I bet somebody in the chat is just like destroying.
Game over.
Oh, Kent wants to know, how did you create the source of the explosions?
Oh, so some of the explosions actually originated from a package that I found on the asset store. It was basically like a 2D, not a 2D, but like a tune type explosion effect, and I just kind of based it around that. So it's not exactly the same, but like the the smoke texture the smoke texture and the explosion actually were created by a particle effect that actually learned from Pierre Picot, and I apologize if I mispronounced that. But he had a very cool tune explosion effect that was created in Blender, and I was like, wow, this is perfect. I could use that. So I took that explosion, I converted it into a sprite sheet. That's what the main explosion, that's where that comes from. And then I just got a single frame of the smoke, and I use that as the smoke. So whenever the tank slides around, it has that smoke particle effect appearing. So that's where that comes from. The rest of the effects, like the impact effects, that's basically just a distortion shader. So it's kind of like a glass shader. And I use a normal map, which has just like a ring. Sorry. Just like a little ring, and then it just grows in size. So it looks like a little shockwave effect. So that's on the impacts and also on the, whenever you explode, you'll see it on the ground. It's a very quick effect, but you'll see that same effect on the ground as well. And then along with that, I also used a couple of like meshes for the explosion. So you'll see like a couple of gears. Those are based off the gears of the tank, and also like the turret and the barrel. Those fly off, and that's based off a particle system as well. But those are like meshes that have colliders, so they actually interact with the ground. So I thought that was kind of cool to have in there. I try to mimic something very similar to, if anyone has played the game Mad Max. In that game, you can you can shoot at other vehicles, enemy vehicles, and they explode, and you see all these like parts flying out everywhere, and it goes into like this really cool slow motion effect, and then it comes back to its normal time frame. But I thought that was really cool, and I want to add that into this game as well, so that's what I did.
That's awesome. Oh, I just found out. Oh,
yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I found out that you can bounce balls off of other balls.
Yeah,
so someone was shooting at me, and like I bounced their ball away, mostly by accident, but oh, dang it.
Yeah,
that's that time.
Yeah, that's one of those cool things. I have done that before. We can deflect them, and they kind of go in opposite directions. Stuff like that is stuff that I didn't anticipate, but that could be like a really cool another game mode where you actually have to, like, the only way to win is to deflect the balls of other incoming projectiles.
Oh, that'd be so hard.
Yeah,
I could actually see this game working pretty well on Android or something.
Yeah.
If you just like tap the screen to the direction you want to shoot at.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool. Boom, boom.
Got him. So there's a question that says, is there any way of moving besides shooting? No. So that's the whole premise of the game, is that you can only move based off the sliding motion, the recoil. That's what makes it unique. If you could just drive around and shoot at other tanks, it would still be kind of cool, but you kind of lose a lot of the uniqueness of it.
Less of a puzzle.
Yeah.
Oh, I almost got him.
Thank you, Darren. Yeah, it was a lot of tweaks on getting the effects to work properly, and very precise timing on, this has to be turned off, that has to be turned on, this has to play, all that kind of stuff. So I think it looks pretty good so far. You lost again.
Game over.
Hey, that time I won. So Ken said the limitations end up making it surprisingly fun. And I feel like in a lot of games, the limitations kind of are what make it fun. Kind of those constraints that make it...
Yeah.
That make the player have to be more creative to figure out how to get stuff done.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's why I really want to create this game. That's why I think it's a good beginner game, because you're limited in your mechanics of the game. It's very simple. You just have the mechanic of shooting and turning the turret. That's it. And then you have to try to defeat the enemy based off those simple mechanics. It's very similar to other games like Flappy Bird, where you just have to basically tap a button to actually move, but it becomes addicting because it's very, very simple. You can very easily get into the game. And it's also, a I want to say it's easy to create, but it's easy to, I guess, use within your game.
That makes sense. Oh gosh, I feel like this would be so hard if there was more than one enemy.
Yeah.
like if what if you, when you finish this level, you get to the second level and there's just 2 enemy tanks.
Yeah.
And then each level there's just more and more. That'd be insane.
Yeah, I did prototype earlier with stuff like that, but it just becomes way too difficult because I mean, if each tank fires once, that's 3 balls already flying through the air, and then they fire again in another second. You know, you have 6 balls in the air. Yeah.
Gosh.
So in terms of the modeling for the tank, how did you actually come up with the design of it? Because it's a very, I mean, it does look like a tank, but it's a very unique tank. Like, it's not a tank that I could easily find anywhere online. Did you start off with like concept art, or you just like model and go like, okay, this is what it's gonna look like?
Oh, thanks. I started out first by like looking at a bunch of references, basically, that I found just online. Google image of real tanks, and then also ArtStation and Sketchfab. And I wanted to make something that was sort of unique. And so I did sketch like some tiny thumbnails in Photoshop. Nothing too advanced. I don't know what that was. And figured it out that way. Let's see, I think it just crashed. That's okay. I guess I won too many times. So I sketched out a few thumbnails in Photoshop, just really small, just to get the basic like angles right. And then from there, it was just making stuff up as I go on the modeling. The thing about that though is like it's such a low poly thing, and there's very few parts. You really just need the wheels, the body, thing that rotates, the turret, and the barrel. So since it's so few parts, it's easy to kind of adjust on the fly and see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
It was pretty fun. Actually, the course, if you go through it, the modeling doesn't take that long. It's quite fast. The majority of the course is texture painting. But yeah.
So in a course, I would have to take a look at it. But do you go through the texturing process in Blender or also in Substance Painter?
In the course, it's only Blender. So there is a difference between the tanks that are in this game and the ones that are for the course, in that I wanted to try a completely Blender texturing workflow, and I also wanted to make something that was like specifically for mobile games, because we don't have anything for that on the site. So there's an opportunity to explore that a bit, and kind of hit both of those at once. But the downside of that is, like, once you're doing stuff for mobile, of course, the shaders are different, and you're not making PBR stuff, you're just making that one texture. Right. And so it also has to be lower resolution. So it ended up not looking as cool when you blow it up and have it on a PC and have super high resolution. It just doesn't hold up as well. So that's why I went through and created a second version in Substance with high resolution maps, PBR, and all that stuff. So it is a bit different, but in the course, I wanted to show like totally Blender. And it was, I will say, it was easier to do it in Substance Painter than Blender, but at least there's multiple ways of doing it if you want.
Yeah. That's good. So are you using the latest version of Substance Painter?
Well, I think there was an update like 2 days ago. So not the latest version, but the close to latest version.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I'm still using 2017. I don't texture as much. I've just been holding on to that 2017 license.
Oh, sure.
So I'm wondering if I should upgrade it, if there's like a huge difference in upgrading.
I think if you're doing it now, I think it would be worth upgrading, because they've added a few different things. Let's see. So they added a bunch of like extra textures and stuff, but that's for like characters. But they also added some viewport widgets, which are really helpful. So you can actually now like change the mirror location and whatever. Before it was only based on the world origin. So if you moved your asset like a little bit to the left in Blender, then export it again, like the entire thing would be screwed up. So they finally made like a widget, and you can move that around, and just some like texture manipulation widgets, which are helpful, and it's just faster, which is always good.
Yeah. Okay, I definitely have to look into that. I mean, that's mostly what I use myself. I don't see myself texturing in Blender. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit not frustrating, but it's like it's so close to working well in Blender, but it's just not quite there yet. Ken said in the chat that he was surprised to see me use only Blender for the tank textures, and that they looked good. So thanks. But it did take a little bit longer than it would have normally. But part of that is that I didn't have to do the whole PBR workflow for mobile. It's just a mobile shader. You put one texture on it. If I had been doing PBR, I don't think I would have done that. But for a single texture, it's actually not too bad just to use nodes as your layers and go through it that way. So the underlying foundation is there for Blender to get good at it. So I'm hoping that it will in the future, but we'll see.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes. 2.8 just dropped too, right?
The beta. So not the official version, which will probably be a while from now. Probably. I'm guessing from the vibe that I get that there will be multiple beta versions. So there'll be like beta 1, beta 2, all the way until release. But we will see.
Now you did the tank course in 2.8, right?
I did. Yep. So that's using the whole new workflow and whatnot, which was really helpful because you can't really see the layers of what you're painting in 2.7. So it would have been not impossible, but very difficult.
So would you say that course would be good for like beginners if they just dropped into that? I mean, they should have some experience, but if someone who doesn't have a lot of experience with Blender in general, could they just jump into 2.8 and follow that course?
I think so. It's not like a complete introduction. Like we don't cover. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say because there are some like super basic things that you just kind of expected to know in terms of like what edit mode is and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're like reasonably comfortable with like the basics, then I think so. Yeah. And now we have quite a few 2.8 things out. I was actually kind of surprised because somebody asked on Twitter, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we do have a few." And then I realized we actually have quite a bit. Yeah. So it's cool to see that come around.
Yeah, I need to start using 2.8. I'm using an older version, but I'm kind of worried that it's going to be a huge leap in terms of what I need to learn. So if it's going to be like a starting over from scratch, then
I don't think so. I don't think it'll be like starting from scratch. It'll just be like a bunch of little things that you notice are like, oh, that's nice. Okay. It's not a huge leap. Yeah. For Tank Ball, let's see. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of the development of it? Because we talked about, that it was fairly simple to make. A lot of it was spent on the polish and making it like feel cool. Is there any other like particular aspects of it that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is really not so much in a course, but little things like having the camera. Like this is not in a course, but the camera actually following the tank that exploded. Like if you didn't explode, having the camera zoom in on the enemy character that exploded, that was
nice.
That was something I really want to have in because in the course, it's just the camera looking at the player at all times. So if the tank explodes off screen, you might hear it, you might see it like briefly, but you don't actually get to focus in on it. So I really want to have that. And it was a lot of testing back and forth to get it to smoothly go from your tank to their tank and then back forward and timing it so it actually, you get there just in time to actually see the explosion, but you also don't say they're super long. So that was fun to do. and then just tweaking the visuals. So there is I usually don't use post processing in games, but I've been using it a lot more lately, especially with the lighting in Unity. It's not that great. I mean,
Yeah.
one thing I love about Blender is that I can use very simplistic lighting and it looks like 100 times better. But in Unity, you basically have to try to go through all these different settings and try to do all these different things, jump through hoops, and then it kind of looks okay. So I use post processing a lot to get the glow effect, to get there's like ambient occlusion. There's a lot of color grading, which is what I use most often to get the colors to look not too dark, not too light, not washed out, all that kind of stuff. So that was fun to do as well. And then also the particle effects. I am going to have a bonus lesson. It's about 45 minutes long. That's why I didn't include it in the original course. But it is going to be a bonus lesson to go over the step-by-step process of creating the explosion, which is the most visually appealing particle effect in the game. So
nice.
Using the sprite sheet for the main tune explosion, going over adding the meshes so they come out like a fountain and then they hit the ground. Having the shockwave appear, have it actually appear on the ground. That's something new I had to learn because typically the particles always face the camera. So I had to figure out how to get it to stay on the ground. And then combine that with audio and also like a light flashing as you're going through the explosion. So that's pretty fun. That's going to be a bonus lesson. Again, that is a very long lesson, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's technical. It's just very tedious because there's a lot of different settings you have to go through. But I think that'll be fun for people who want to learn the process of creating particle effects and layering them together.
Oh, yeah. No, I could see that being even as a standalone thing working pretty well. Someone just wants to check out explosions and cartoon stuff. Everybody wants to make explosions. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Alice Hart says, I love it feels like a mixture of a turn-based game and a real-time game. And that is cool. That timer element of it makes it so it is kind of like you're taking turns, but not really. You can kind of save it up. It works out.
Yeah, like every now and then I'll check to see if the enemy tank is actually aiming at me, because by the time he aims at you, it's very, very quick. So I always try to aim time my shot so I can quickly move out of the way if he does start shooting at me. So yeah, that is a nice mix to it.
Yeah, so I'm sure, I mean, we can talk about this more in the future as they come along. But are you planning on doing more things like this?
Yes, for sure. So, I mean, my goal is to create more game projects like this in the future, whether they're more simplistic or more, I guess, complex. I would say this would probably be the most complex as I want to get. I want to go a little bit simpler to make it easier to create more casual games. So this is kind of in the works. We're still kind of planning it, but we want to create a platformer game very similar to the Super Mario, was it Go, or something like that. But basically a platformer like that it uses our Melvin character in our IP characters for a platformer. So that's the next goal. Then we'll see from there. I mean, I have a number of ideas of projects I want to create. Maybe revive the range somewhere down the line.
Hey,
we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, along that note, I've been working on the environment assets that were originally intended for the sci-fi first-person shooter. Yeah. And so the next course that you'll see from me will be about that, and it'll be animated, and it'll be awesome.
So animated in terms of like actual animations on the props and stuff.
Yeah, it'll be a door, and so it'll have a pretty complex like open animation where things like fold out and like transform and like move back, and so crossing my fingers that it turns out well.
Yeah, I mean it looked good. I remember seeing the little the folding thing. Is that like cloth or what is that at the bottom of the door?
Oh, so there's the main part in the middle that'll like kind of like come back and then like retreat into another piece, and then that'll like open outwards, and then there's some pieces on the bottom that are a bunch of like little things that have hinges, and then those all like fold up like an accordion. Oh,
okay.
So I was trying to find as many possible like random ways of opening and closing things as possible. Shove it all together and we'll see how it goes.
Is that going to be textured as well?
Yeah, I'll do that one in Substance Painter.
Oh,
So
nice.
build it in Blender 2.8, bake all the normal maps, all that stuff, and then bring it into Substance Painter, then bring it into Unity.
Oh, yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
So have you tested it in Unity for already? Like the animations, they come in just fine?
Not yet. So I actually tested in the course. I've recorded the first part of it, and I tested just to make sure that the animation actually works with the design of the door.
Mhm.
We test that with grease pencil. So
Oh, nice.
that just makes like a super fast, like, okay, this part of the door goes up, that part goes out over to the side. That makes it really fast to prototype and just make sure that things work out well.
Nice.
Question from Omar: do you know how in the world the Rockstar makes the whole map load in its entirety in Red Dead Redemption 2? I would have no idea. Gonzo, that's all you.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't load the whole map. That would be crazy. I mean, I'm sure they have very good optimization that they can have a lot of stuff on screen, but usually the way it works is that as far as your camera can go out, that's what it's going to be rendering out. They may include other stuff beyond that, but games is always about trickery and basically pulling a veil over your face, so it looks like you're actually loading an entire level. You can probably see out in the distance and see some very nice terrain. I have played the game, by the way, and it looks incredible. But yeah, they're not loading entire levels, entire characters. A lot of times they may have like data points for the characters and where things should go, and then they have something that allows them to appear in game. Like in older times, they would have things pop in, pop out, and that's basically what they're doing. Is they're loading things as you see them. But nowadays, you don't have to have that pop in. You could have it come in seamlessly.
Nice. So are they that through like level of detail type stuff as well?
Yeah, that's part of it. So it's level of detail. It's frustum culling, which is the camera, and then you have occlusion culling, which is uh, basically if I'm looking at a door and there's something behind that door, I'm not going to render what's behind that door. But if there's a possibility that I'm going to see that object behind it, then I'll keep it active and rendered within the game. And that's basically how it works.
Well, here's an interesting difference that I'm curious about, because there has to be a difference between loading something into memory and rendering it, right? So like, is the stuff that's behind the door still loaded but not rendered, or is it just not loaded at all?
I think, yeah, it is loaded. It's just not rendered.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. But even in the game, they're not loading the whole thing. They're just loading parts of it that are maybe just outside what's being rendered, or there's like a buffer zone.
I mean, I don't know the exact details of it. I would assume there's a radius of saying, hey, all these objects should be loaded, regardless of they're rendered. But obviously, if something's way off in a distance and you're not going to get there anytime soon, then there's no point in loading that at that point. But again, I don't know the exact details of how that works. I just know that it's based off culling.
I'm sure they took many days and weeks and months to figure out the perfect system.
Yeah.
A couple questions. Okay, from Wes. Were there any gotchas you came across while bringing the Blender tanks into Unity, having the turret move, etc.? Not really on my end. The only thing to make sure is that like everything that moves has to be a separate object in order for it to be controlled programmatically. I didn't want to use rigs or anything like that, because that'll just slow things down. Rigs tend to do that when they're not necessary, so leaving things as separate objects is pretty much it, making sure the origin point is right where the point of rotation is. Yeah, Gonzo, were there any troubles importing things?
I did kind of slightly modify the tanks. I took them back into Blender. Most of it was fine, but I wanted I don't know. I think some of the origin points were a little bit off. Like the tank, I wanted the origin point on the floor so that I can easily just. It wasn't necessary, but it'd make it a lot easier to actually just place things on the ground.
Oh, I see.
Then I think there was something. I forget exactly what was wrong with the turret, but like for whatever reason, I couldn't rotate the turret and the barrel together as one. Oh no, I know what it was. So when you export from Blender, the Z-axis is pointing up and the Y-axis is up in Unity.
Hmm.
So I was trying to rotate the turret along the Y-axis, but
Oh.
obviously in Blender, that was rotating the turret like this. So I was like, okay, I could either use an empty game object and use that as the parent for this stuff, or I could just go back into Blender and say, I want to export the experimental like apply transform thing, and that
Hmm.
seemed to work just fine. But when I did that with the way the tank was set up, like it moved the barrel out, like it wouldn't appear in Unity at all. So it would just appear as the turret piece, not the barrel.
Oh, weird.
So I had to go back and forth and basically make the barrel separate, and that seemed to work. But yeah, that was the only issues I had with that. For the most part, everything works just fine.
Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, the transforms, I feel like, get you pretty often.
Yeah, that's the only difference, really.
Let's see, we got more questions. Quite Nameless asks, in the tank ball course, do you go through the design phase?
I do not. So in terms of design, like designing the levels and stuff like that, no. I mean, I guess I see the level as being very simplistic, so it's pretty easy to just look at the level and go, okay, that's how that is. But basically, the design process was we're going to place these containers or objects that have colliders and make it seem useful in the game, so I can actually shoot at something and have it actually ricochet at an angle and things like that. So that's, I mean, I didn't put a whole lot of thought into the design process. It wasn't some complex map or anything like that. So it was basically just, okay, if I shoot at this, it's going to be angled, so I want to have it ricochet at an angle as well. So that's basically it. And have enough of those objects in there so you can actually hide behind them and then navigate around almost like a maze-like format.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. Another question. Silent Heart. Sorry if I missed it, but did you do any prototyping before settling on certain mechanics? What else did you try?
Yeah, so the original, I'll probably include this in an article, but the original, most of what I had intended for this game is in here. The only thing that I did change up was the camera. So initially I had it set up so that the camera could look at all the tanks in the game, but it was a little bit weird because I would either have to use an orthographic camera, which basically means that we're looking at it from a kind of a weird angle, and you lose a lot of that detail within the game and the tanks. And I thought, these are great looking tanks. What's the point of looking at them from so far away? So I switched back to a perspective camera that just looks down at the tank, and it was very simplistic. The other method was a lot more complex, and it didn't really work that well because the issue was that, if the tanks get closer, the camera would zoom in a bit further. If they, got pushed away a bit further away, the camera should zoom out. But this only really worked along one specific axis. So either the Z axis or the X axis. So if the tanks pushed away along the Z axis, it would zoom out just fine. But if they went along the X axis, it would kind of still try to follow both of them, but it wouldn't really work that well. So it would get kind of cut off. That was the biggest thing that I changed. I also added in the slow motion effect for the explosion. Before it was just, they explode, they die, that's it. Yeah, and I guess the biggest change was probably the visuals in terms of the map. It was a lot different before, and I'll display what it looks like before in the article.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting, like all the camera changes. I remember in Portal Lithium, the tower defense game that we did last year, that camera actually changed quite a bit. Yeah. And orthographic ended up working out much better for that particular game. But not as much for this one, because I remember when I messed with your game, I thought, oh, maybe this one will work well with orthographic as well. Because what was cool about using it in Portal Lithium is that you can use the sides of the map as like the sides of the screen and everything like lined up perfectly as a square.
Yeah.
But with this game, there was too many elements like that were potentially blocking you, and it felt really weird.
Yeah, I mean, I could have kept it with a static camera, but I thought, that it doesn't feel as dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see.
Yeah, so those are basically the main things. I can look through the chat as well.
Oh yeah, some good talk about Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, everyone always posts about how Horizon Zero Dawn. They have this GIF of their camera and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
But I included something like that in an article a while back too. It's I'd have to look it up, but it's basically the same process. Every game does this, and it's a nice visual because it shows you the I don't know what you call it, the frame or the wireframe of the camera and how far out it can actually reach.
Mm-hmm.
And as it's rotating, you see things kind of pop in and pop out. So you see like a whole city appear in front of the camera, but then around it, it's just basically just a plane. So
it looks really cool.
Yeah, it looks really cool. That's basically how it works in the game. You don't see all that because you're just looking at it from the camera's view. But if you're looking at it from behind the camera's view, you can actually see how it works.
Nice. Were there any optimizations that you had to do after the fact to get this to run quickly?
No, I mean, I try to keep it as optimized as possible. I did bake the lighting, and there's really only one light in the game. Almost everything is static except for the balls. And then I did in the game, usually I would have where I would actually create the ball. So things like the particle effects, the projectiles, all that kind of stuff would be instantiated, which means they're created, and typically I would destroy them afterwards. In this game, I did a little bit differently. I created them, but then I just turned them off. Or if I destroyed them all, I guess, together, not having a lot of garbage, I guess, within a game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a small game. There's probably stuff that I could optimize even better, but for the most part, I did get all the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, on the performance optimizations.
Nice.
Yeah. And post-processing is usually one of those things that I don't like to use because it can affect performance, but it seems to be running just fine, especially on the WebGL side. I mean, I don't know how it runs for you guys, but for me, it runs quite smooth. So that's a big step up because previous versions of WebGL was very, very slow, and maybe I'm just using it better, or maybe it's been improved, but it seems to run a lot better now.
Yeah, it's surprising how much can run in WebGL now. Like, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you, let's see. So we talked about publishing it on itch.io.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned some other possible like publishing areas, because I remember back in the day they used to have like the Flash game sites and
Newgrounds.
Yeah, Newgrounds and things like that I would always try to find like in computer class so I could avoid the typing exercises and just play games. I don't know if I would have found them otherwise. But are there still lots of game sites like that are still popular, or are people now just going to like mobile games and whatnot, and those are kind of like dying off?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because I mean, back then in high school, we all played those games, but now I don't play them as much. I don't go to websites to play games online. Maybe I don't know, but itch.io seems to be the most popular one. I haven't really seen any that it stand out in that regard. So I'll probably stick with that. If I did publish anywhere else, it would probably be like actual platforms like Steam or mobile or stuff like that.
Nice. I think Steam would be pretty cool. We'd have to figure that out, but that'd be sweet. Excellent. Are there any other questions from the chat or anybody else? Because we're coming up on an hour about.
Yeah. So let me post a link to your course. I'm posting a link to Jonathan Lampel's mobile game tank course.
Sweet.
So that's already out right now. My game, the tank ball development game, it's going to be out next week, next Thursday. So we're kind of doing some promo ahead of time. So you will probably see quite a few, I guess, promotional shots and stuff like that on social media. But now you can play the game, you can see what it's like, and then once the course actually comes out, you can actually take a look at how you can actually build it yourself.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to see people's results.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple tanks that people have made through the Blender course, and what made me super happy is that they're not the same as what I made.
Right.
You know, like
That's
a lot of tutorial results are like, oh, you go through and it's like, okay, they did the thing exactly. Like that's cool, and that's not easy by itself. But to take that and kind of run with it and be creative with the result, I think is awesome. That makes me happy, and I hope to see the same from your course as well.
Yeah, I mean that's something we always strive for. You know that we want to teach something. We don't want to teach you point by point, line by line to do this. And the good thing about this game is that I personally have a lot of ideas on how to expand this game. So I'm sure a lot of people will as well. So if you guys create your own levels, I would love to see that. I mean, the game mechanics are so simple, but they can be used in a variety of different ways for different levels, very, very simply too. So I would love to see what you guys create from that. I'll probably create a couple of exercises to challenge you guys on building more levels, but I'll definitely love to see what you guys create.
Yeah. I think last question from Omar, are high-end games really going to be able to be played on your web browser no matter your computer specs? No. I mean, not high-end games. I mean, there are things like game streaming and whatnot that's coming soon through basically everybody wants to offer that. It seems like NVIDIA, Microsoft, probably a million other people are trying that. But not through like WebGL.
Yeah. I think if that did happen, it would be way in the future. I just don't see it happening right now.
Oh, really? I thought they were working on that.
I mean, possibly. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. I don't see you playing Battlefield or Call of Duty on WebGL or anything like that.
Oh, no, definitely not WebGL. Yeah. I was thinking just like they're playing it on their servers and just kind of streaming it back.
Yeah, I mean, that used to happen. There used to be a service that did do that, and they went away, and I guess they're trying to revive it. I don't know. I think it'd do better now because we have better hardware and better internet speeds and stuff like that.
Wes says, are any cool CGC live streams coming up in an hour? And the answer is yes. From Wes, he's doing introduction to CGC for all the people that are brand new and like a little tour around the site. So we better give them some time before that. And so I think we're wrapping it up here. Anything else you want to talk about, Gonzo?
No, I'm good. Thank you everyone for joining us on this live stream.
Yeah, I hope you got to play it, and I'll definitely play a little bit more probably today as I'm procrastinating other things. All right, talk to you guys later.
All right, see you guys later.